Muy buenos días, una vez más. Vamos a continuar con nuestro programa, con nuestra agenda de...
Morning, everyone. Once again, we would like to continue with our agenda. And at this very moment, we shall go to session number 2. Capacity is creation, and we shall tackle cyber resilience in electronic trade or commerce, as well as the governance of the data governance for regional use and solving problems with regional data, and also to analyze issues and data sources. We shall have as moderator Lady Sarah, who is going to be with us this morning, and we shall invite as well the director of Post Union Postal Universal, Tracy, Hackshaw, and other researchers who are online sharing with us. Good morning and welcome once again.
Good morning and welcome to our second capacity building session, where we will focus on key areas that are shaping the Caribbean's digital future. We are honored to have with us an excellent panel of speakers who will share their expertise and perspectives. First, we invite Mr. Ali and Mr. Baboolal, who are joining us remotely to share findings and perspectives on how the Caribbean can encourage the generation of regional data and apply it to address priority issues.
All right. Good everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name is Abdullah Ali. I'll be presenting on behalf of myself and Kevin. Today we'll be discussing data governance for the Caribbean use and problem solving. And let's jump straight into it. Now, we need to understand why data governance matters and what exactly is data governance. Data governance is essentially the mentality, framework, data science technique for understanding why and how we should go about ensuring data integrity, data ownership, data security, and data compliance. Now, data governance is crucial for Caribbean resilience as it ensures that data is managed effectively, securely, and transparently. This can help improve decision-making, enhance service delivery, and foster trust amongst stakeholders. It is imperative here in our specific Caribbean use case that we understand data colonialism and how our own local data governance can combat that. For those who may not be aware, data colonialism is essentially the thought process that the data that we use, the data that we collect, the data that we've been fed, is essentially serves purposes of other nations, other societies other than our own, and it is something that we've been consistently battling for years. It also offers tailored problem solving because the situations and scenarios that we have in the Caribbean are completely different many a times across, different solutions that are solved and integrated in many first world countries or many different continents across the world. It also fosters collaboration amongst Caribbean countries. Now, data governance has always been something that's been an afterthought in development, especially in the ICT infrastructure within the Caribbean. At least here in Trinidad and Tobago, it's a very niche thing, and there are many barriers to data governance within the Caribbean. From the top that I can list from my experience that we have a very fragmented ICT infrastructure. It, has unequal access to broadband, limited rural connectivity, and inconsistent digital infrastructure that proves to be a big hindrance to data governance. But another thing is that there are siloed national approaches. Each country within the Caribbean develops its own ICT policies, its own databases with limited regional harmonization, leading to duplication and inefficiencies. Now, one way to combat this is capacity and skill gaps, but that's also a barrier because we also have a shortage of trained data scientists, ICT professionals, and policy experts that hinders this effective governance, collaboration, and data management. Two other barriers that are prominent there's a lack of trust and proper data sovereignty because citizens and governments often worry that sharing sensitive data across borders would cause a lack of privacy, trust issues, security concerns, and a loss of revenue, which is also the last point. There is limited financial and institutional resources. Now, what my suggestion would be to relieve these barriers and solutions to them would be that we should first and foremost strengthen our foundation, which is our regional ICT infrastructure through IXPs and long hubs for connectivity across many miles. We should also begin to harmonize across the CARICOM with a single ICT space and interoperability standards. This will allow us to become a lot more resilient to many different problems. As we share similar problems and similar solutions will come up of it. This will allow us to build trust with each other and cause transparent governance. This will also allow us to leverage regional and multilateral funding. So many countries within the Caribbean are often victims of inequality amongst wealth. This will allow us to support each other the same ways that we support each other when hurricanes pass through, causing damages. We've always been standard and unified in this stance. So we should adopt a similar mentality when we begin to invest these skills and build our capacity together. Now, current challenges in ICT infrastructure, as I would have mentioned, is a big problem, but there's often limited access to reliable internet services across the Caribbean, some countries more so than others. And as a result, that causes inadequate regional coordination efforts. And as a result, that chain reaction now causes lack of interoperability between systems across many countries. And the best way to solve this would be financing. Money is always the biggest motivator. And unfortunately, that is a challenge as well. Insufficient investment into data infrastructure. Now, we've talked about the problems. We've talked about problems across, the external situations. However, in the Caribbean, we have unique scenarios. As I would have mentioned earlier, there are scenarios that other countries would have solved. But we have our own situations here. And from my personal research, from my personal experience, the top 4 priorities that we should begin investing in and solving problems are in climate resilience, education, health, and economic development. Now, education, health, and economic development, they're all understood. No matter what, you can see the benefits of it. But climate resilience is a growing field, it's new. And what many people fail to realize, many Caribbean countries often rely on ecotourism as their main source of income, whereas countries like my homeland, Trinidad and Tobago, relies mostly on natural resources, like oil, for example. Caribbean countries like Barbados, for example, their biggest motivator for financial revenue is tourism. Now, when acts of God, for example, natural disasters pass through, this threatens their livelihood. And being able to have a proper data governance framework that will allow us to facilitate proper solutions to help mitigate and solve these problems would facilitate better climate resilience and overall benefits for all included. Now, I've spoken a lot about Caribbean regional integration. We're working together. And I would encourage regional data generation because, for example, some countries might be able to better facilitate data generation that would allow other countries to use that same data for solutions. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a big problem with flooding. And our flood stats may be able to facilitate solutions in front of other countries that don't have the necessary infrastructure. Data is always the beginning step to any problem solver. It's like water. Whenever astrophysicists look towards the stars, they look for signs of water because water is considered the biggest indicator and mark of intelligent life or life as a whole. And it's the same thing. For us, our water is data. And without it, you can't start to do anything. So you need to have infrastructure in places like sensors, satellite data, IoT sensors in place to be able to collect this data and to be able to use it. So my suggestion is to foster effective data governance. We need to establish data hubs, promote interoperability, and ensure transparency in data usage. This can lead to better decision making and resource allocation. Now, we can consider ourselves a bit behind, and that's not to insult ourselves. We must begin to understand and accept where we are, especially within the ICT realm. Compared to other nations, we are behind, and that's fine. In a way, it's a blessing in disguise because being behind, we get to see what others do first. Yes, we're not the forefront, but because we're behind, we get to see what works and what doesn't work. We get to look at global use cases. We get to see what other countries would have done. and we see, hey, they have use case X and they have solution Y, and this worked. It cost them X amount of money, but for us, we can adjust it and integrate it. Now, I like to examine global examples whenever I do my case studies and researches. Recently, I was working on papers that require AI policies for the Caribbean that should be implemented in climate resilience. And one of the first things that we always do, we look to see across the board where solutions are being implemented. And no matter where we looked, whether it was the Netherlands, whether it was Kenya, France, America, India, they always had some solid data governance framework that facilitated them to be able to work together as a cohesive unit to find solutions. In Kenya, for example, a country within the African continent, well, many often don't think that would be the first and foremost in any sort of innovative ideas in ICT. But here they are, being an example for us to look upon. They've created health dashboards, just like France, who has created clinical data warehouses that provide valuable insights on how these models can be adopted for us in the Caribbean. For example, Tanzania and Uganda, they're also working on further solutions just as here, and we are currently working with them in our research organization to sort of utilize their techniques for our own use case. So, yes, we may not have the same situation as them, but we can look to see what works and adopt it to our own use cases. Now, my proposed solution for the Caribbean would be build a regional infrastructure sharing program. Begin to standardize a data platform that allows interoperability, that allows systems in finance, systems in education, systems in health to work together, to have a backbone that allows for better facilitating of many of our problems. We don't have to start big, we have to start small, and baby steps are the way to get there. And give governance frameworks for those data usage are our set baby steps. We need to understand the outcomes that dashboards will bring for tracking our progress and bring in a next level of data analytics to our benefit. Now, I've spoken about the problems, spoken about possible solutions, but let's begin to materialize what we can imagine for our own use cases, what we can begin to see, what stakeholders should pay example to, and what stakeholders should have a back of their mind as their input. Now, I've selected at random 5 countries within the Caribbean. I unfortunately cannot do all. And from my understanding through research, this is what I've seen as the biggest problems or the biggest pain points that can be solved. And I focused this specifically on my research area, which is generative AI and usage of agentic systems. And of course, data governance frameworks are the must for all of these. And I began to make recommendations, or some of these are already being implemented. For example, I'll start with at home for myself, Trinidad and Tobago. We already have flood management being developed. Agentic AI predicts flooding utilizing OPM plus shared hydrology data for faster disaster response and for faster notification systems across the island. This will help mitigate financial loss, protect life, protect structure, protect property, and overall begin to help the government and the necessary agencies facilitate better flood management. For Barbados, for example, tourism resilience, AI-driven visitor flow, climate impact forecasting, sustainable tourism. Jamaica, healthcare optimization, AI triage, patient data analytics, stronger healthcare delivery through interoperable health records. Jamaica, hurricane preparedness, AI early warning systems to stimulate storm impact. Success depends on the transfer of disaster plus infrastructure data. Haiti, agriculture and food security, which is a big one. We know Haiti is one of our sister islands that always needs some sort of help. And this is the best way for us to help through regional collaboration. We create AI systems for crop monitoring, climate models, better harvest outcomes, and shared standardized data plus farm data. Now, in the end, here's my call to action. My call to action would be for government agencies, leaders, stakeholders, both private and public, to establish regional data governance framework. Work with the subject matter experts that we have already in the Caribbean. Look towards ourselves first before looking elsewhere, because we have the necessary talent to facilitate X, Y, and Z. Invest in the ICT infrastructure improvements. That's our foundation. Without a road, we can't properly drive a car. It's simple as that. We need to have our roads built in the ICT infrastructure to see our improvements coming. Foster collaboration amongst stakeholders within our own countries and within each other. I would love to see Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, Cuba, Haiti, Barbados, and all the other countries begin working together, just as we have always had. We share common history, we share common background, many of us share similar cultures. Why not continue to collaborate like this? Foster collaboration among stakeholders, incentivize these stakeholders with policies, monetary incentives, so that they're able to leverage our data governance standards and begin taking the first steps by creating set policies and standards. There's someone has to take the first step, and it should be one of our leaders. Someone takes the first step to show where we're going, begin to set an end goal, set out time frames, frameworks, and how we're going to get there, begin incorporating everyone into a program so that we have a collaborative experience moving forward. And in the end, I believe firmly, if that we're consistent with it, we can begin to see the fruits of our labor, just as many other countries, continents, and nations have already. Now, I've come to the end of my presentation, and this has been a collaborative experience between Mr. Kevin and I. Thank you all for your attention. And of course, the floor is now open to anyone who has any questions, and we'll be free to answer. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin and Abdullah. Do you have any questions from the floor? I see no hands. So now we're going to hand over to Mr. Tracy Hackshaw, who brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in digital transformation and international frameworks. And he will speak on cyber resilience in the digital economy with a focus on e-commerce logistics.
Thank you very much, Shanea. So, good morning, everyone. Those who I saw yesterday, hello again. I'm here today to talk about something that you may not be fully aware of. When you buy things online, right? If you buy stuff online, do you think of what happens when you buy it online and then between the purchase and it arrives somewhere on your doorstep or at the pickup location, how that gets there? Do you think about that? How it actually happens? The situation that we face today is that as the digital economy grows, we see more and more packages, parcels, items that you buy being delivered to you online, well, physically after buying them online. And therefore, it creates a new, what we call in cyber resilience or cybersecurity, a new threat landscape. Meaning that several times you may have seen this if you are buying stuff online, you might get a text message that says, collect your package or check here to see where your package is. Now, are you certain that that text message or that email or that WhatsApp message is real? Because when you click on that, it sends you to a tracking website or something, and then you put in information to find out because you want to know where your package is. But in many cases, that's something called a smishing attack. And that smishing attack is designed to collect your data and potentially worse, steal your identity, or further, perhaps even steal your financial credentials, because in many cases you're putting in information that is only known to you when you bought the package. So something like last few days of your credit card number or something like that. So what I'm here to speak about today is the importance of that and how that is going to work, or how you should work to protect yourself against these issues. Yesterday we did a session with several of your colleagues from the what I call the wider postal sector. This would be the post, the couriers, the customs, transport officials, etc. The entire chain of supply, so a supply chain that leads to a package getting from a supplier to your door is what we talk to. And if you can think about it for a second, that would be anybody who is dealing with payments, that's part of the supply chain. Anybody dealing with tracking, the tracking software that you see, another part of the supply chain. People who are dealing with the actual packaging that you put things into. So the boxes or the envelopes, the things that are stuffed into the package, all of those people are part of the supply chain. The barcode, when you look at the box that comes to your door or your package, there's a barcode with a label on it that carries data. And that data is actually very important data and potentially very sensitive data that's being moved across, in many cases, the world. So if you're buying something from another country and it's coming into your country, it's moving through potentially several countries to get there, being put on a transport vehicle, whether it be a car, a truck, a train, or a plane, or a ship. All of that is happening and is being handled by several people, and that information is being transmitted by a barcode, just scanning it, etc. All of that to get your package to you. So when you think of something, how long it takes, think about that for a second. So in the sector, the majority of the things that are moved are done to the postal sector or the post offices. In some parts of the world, we would see that being moved through couriers as well. So you would have heard of FedEx and UPS and DHL and others, but also private couriers that you may not have heard of. They are moving this information throughout the world. And as we increase our digital presence, the digital economy grows, as you can see here, as many as 70% of the posts are now getting involved in the digital economy through digital inclusion projects. Many of them are doing e-government services. 71% are e-commerce services, and they're also offering digital financial services. Now, it's not moving. Where am I? Okay, good. Now, 34% of the posts show signs of becoming a one-stop shop for digital services. And again, that shows you how things are growing in the sector. And the infrastructure is becoming critical across multiple channels. Do you know that there are over 500,000 post offices in the world? In fact, there are 650,000 post offices around the world. And many of those post offices are, if you look at them, they have boxes where you could collect in your packages as well. But of course, it's also a place where the postal workers are working from to pick up your information or your packages and deliver it to you. As posts become more digital, they're offering more services, but then they become more susceptible to breaches, such as DDoS attacks, identity theft, and so on. And of course, there are many partners that are involved in this as we go forward. But as you look at the landscape of the posts, you would see that their cybersecurity posture is not exactly where you want it to be. As a matter of fact, if you look at these slides that I'm showing here, you would see that while they have basic security on the website, if you look at what's happening in the organization, you will start to see that less and less of them are preventing practices in the organization that would allow them to become more resilient, as we say in the industry. So less than half in many cases are implementing good practices, and that's of concern to us in the UPU. And if you look at what's happening with training and staff, again, based upon where you are in the world, if you look at the red lines, you'll see at the bottom of the list, Latin America and the Caribbean is, in many cases, the lowest rung of the ladder in terms of those who are preparing themselves to become more secure in this industry. So if you look at the first one, well under 50% of Latin America and Caribbean offer cybersecurity training to their staff members. And if you look at the slide that talks about implementing cybersecurity crisis management plans, only about 30% or so are implementing plans in the region, and so on. And the budgets in these organizations not keeping up with the workload. So the key thing with cybersecurity is that it does require money to ensure that the cybersecurity posture is improved and cyber resilience strategies are implemented. Without money, without budget, nothing can happen. Only 35% of the sector is, according to our survey, is affiliated with the national CCERT or CERT. And that's also very concerning to us, in that it's not seen as critical infrastructure. It's seen as almost as an add-on to what's going on in the digital economy. And what we're trying to do by coming here and talking to you and so on is show you that this physical part of the digital economy is still extremely important, because without that, you cannot get the things that are happening through e-commerce, the packages, your services, your goods. And without that happening, and let's assume that a post or a courier goes down, you will basically break the digital economy train that's going on in terms of e-commerce. So we're hoping that this session will allow you to tell your colleagues and to take this more seriously, that cybersecurity is a very important part of not just for payments and online things and websites, but also for the thing that happens after you buy something online, which is why I talk about e-commerce logistics. And of course, we look at the entire supply chain. It affects airlines. So with cyber attacks, airlines get delayed or brought down in some cases, not crashing. I mean, the airline itself is not working, or the systems aren't working. You have containers at ports being backlogged for months and at a time in some cases. And of course, you have a situation where the actual jobs of people are at risk, livelihoods. If it is that you see or you get attacked, it's entirely possible that could bring down an entire business. And in that case, you'll see people being laid off and so on. So it's not just about money being lost, it's about livelihoods being lost as well. So in terms of the evolving threat landscape, we are talking here about a range of opportunities that attackers have to intervene in the supply chain and bring systems down. And in the postal network, in the wider postal network, including logistics, I don't know if you know, but many posts around the world also are banks. They are offering financial services through the post, as well as there actually are banking posts around the banks who operate their posts. In fact, the 10th largest bank in the world is a post office. It's in China. And I think the 27th next largest bank in the world is in Japan. It's also a bank. So many posts actually operate banks as well. That's from the history of the post being one of the first transmitters of money and financial services way back in the 1700s. And the post used to do something called money orders. So you have, and that still might exist today in some places, that's a precursor to what's called remittances. So those who receive remittances in your country, in most cases, it was done through the post way back in the day. Now it's done through remittance companies like Western Union and MoneyGram, but the post used to do that a long time ago. So they have a history of financial services. And today, now they're converting themselves to offer financial services. As you have the government, which is receiving bill payments, receiving payments for licenses and for permits, etc. Ransomware attacks on the rise, as we said. A lot of phishing attacks are happening. And the supply chain is really where we need to focus our efforts. As we spoke today, I spoke about it yesterday in our workshop, the supply chain is seen as perhaps the most risk-intensive area that is not being looked at by many organizations. The supply chain, meaning not you, but your partners, your suppliers, are the ones who are provided, who are new threat landscape, especially if your partners are not well-resourced. So even if you are well-resourced, as we talked about yesterday, our colleagues yesterday said they had their cybersecurity plans sorted out. They think they're fine. but they have no control over their suppliers. And if your suppliers are not also well-resourced, they may have one person working in the IT department. They may even have a cybersecurity person in the organization. You don't know what's happening in that organization. And therefore, you are at risk, because if they're a supplier to you, then what happens to them can happen to you. And that has happened several times in the industry. You may have heard of something called CrowdStrike, which was a major supply chain attack that happened a couple of years ago, or was it last year? And a few years ago, we had the infamous SolarWinds attack, which was a typical help desk software that ran, it's very basic. No one thought about help desk software, help, getting tickets, if you know that what's happening there. They attacked SolarWinds, and that spread like wildfire throughout almost 20,000 organizations around the world, bringing down many companies for days, causing billions of dollars in damage to those companies just from that one attack. And then you have suppliers of the suppliers. So a true supply chain. The suppliers of the suppliers are the ones you have to look at as well, and so on and so forth. So there's a growing need for cybersecurity and cyber resilience. And what I'm here to talk about today is to show you what we are doing in the UPU to help you with that. I'm pointing out some recent attacks in the postal sector. Royal Mail, they are very large. That's the United Kingdom. Were brought down for almost 2 months by a cyber attack, a ransomware attack. In Greece, brought down for several weeks. New Zealand, also a well-resourced organization, brought down for several weeks as part of a government-wide attack. And not only that, cybersecurity, and I think as you are well aware, is becoming increasingly more complex due to geopolitical changes and tensions. The level of sophistication of cybercrime, we heard about AI in the last presentation. So as AI, generative AI, moves along a particular pathway to reasoning, you would see increasing sophistication in cyber attacks. So if you looked at phishing emails that you're getting, at one time they will be spelled bad, there will be misspellings, and you wouldn't understand what's, it's obvious that's a phishing attempt, even though you might fall for it still. But today it's almost impossible to detect a phishing email based on just language alone, because they're using generative AI to generate compelling and very trustworthy email messages that you think is coming from someone you know, the company that you're dealing with, even your boss in a company. And not only that, we've heard of reports of voices being faked through generative AI. So you can actually put in elements of someone's voice and generate a voice note or a voice message or full, it's like a full meeting almost of someone talking. And it sounds like the person who you expect it to be when it's actually a fake. And then you get video in what you call deepfakes, where you even see videos emerging of people who you think are people you know, but actually they're deepfakes. It's using AI to generate the individual. So the entire sector is morphing, and the landscape is getting more complex, which is why it is very important, probably more important than many things we talk about in the internet governance space, to look at cybersecurity and cyber resilience, because it all starts from there, getting trust and safety first, and then you can move from there into ensuring that your services are delivered effectively. What are some best prevention practices? So I explained something to the team yesterday, that there is a growing trend of something called passwordless logins, right? So you don't use passwords anymore, which is, I would say, a good trend, because passwords are perhaps one of the sources of attacks that people don't understand fully. So if you have a password, can I see a show of hands if you're listening on the headsets? How many of you know your password offhand? You just know it. You know it. You memorized it. Show of hands. All right. Not the whole room. How many of you, and let's be honest here, have written down somewhere, posted notes, stuck it somewhere, etc.? right? So there's some nods, and you don't have to, I'm not gonna call you out. The reason why passwords, complex passwords are problematic, the reason why complex passwords are problematic because they're hard to remember. They're really hard to remember. It's true. So when the IT department tells you, it has to be 16 characters, capital letters, special characters, R, J, Y, X, whatever. It's hard to, how do you remember that? So you write it down or you store it somewhere. And guess what? As we showed yesterday in a session we showed a live cyber attack in progress. Cyber attackers know where your stuff is. They know it's where your stuff is. Or even in your organization, if we said yesterday, you don't know who is cleaning your office, who is paying them to look under your keyboard or wherever you hide your password and post-it note, etc. So to avoid that, where passwords are complex and so on, we recommend, in addition to passwordless sign-ins, passphrases. What's a passphrase? It's a sentence that you string together that you can remember. It doesn't have to make sense. It can be, as we said, I gave an example yesterday. Prince of Siam likes swimming in a dump, right? Now that is a very nonsensical statement. And I will add, let's say, a capital letter and a special character here and there, but it's a sentence. And if you remember, you can remember the human mind, the way the mind works. You can remember a phrase, even if it's a stupid phrase. It's a logic. The Prince of Siam swims in the dump. I remember that. I can remember that. More than R, Y, X, G, T, C, Z, etc. So I can remember that. And all I have to do is change the characters somewhat. And that is the difference between breaking that password in a few minutes to 100 years. I'm not joking. So changing your passphrase, your password from a nonsense to characters and letters to a passphrase, 1,000,000% increases the likelihood of it not being breached. So think about that. So passphrases, using multi-factor authentication, and we also don't encourage using SMS, multi-factor. We try to use other methods, sending it to your email, sending it to devices like your phone, like authentication devices in your phone, or other types of devices. Network segmentation, including microsegmentation, continuous patching, updating of software, employee awareness and security training. This, I think, is the most important part of cyber resilience awareness. Getting employees not trained once, sometimes you do a one training and that's it, trained regularly and even doing drills like we did yesterday. You're doing scenarios and planning with your team what would happen if this happens. So you're also showing them how to prevent it from happening, but if it happens, what's your response going to look like? So you minimize the damage in your organization. So doing cyber drills, doing scenario planning, doing instant response plans and updating them regularly. Having your employees, just as you have fire escape plans, when the fire is in the building and you have to know what to do and you have fire wardens, you have similar plans for a cyber attack. If you have a disaster, hurricane, or earthquake, you know what to do. We say have the same type of plan for a cyber attack because in fact, it can have the same effect, bringing down your business completely and bankrupting some companies, etc. All right, so I'm going to skip past this. So what are we doing in the UPU? So we have developed a few cyber resilience initiatives to assist the sector with this. We have, this, as we listed there, our .post domain. So you see me, I'm walking around my .post shirt. The .post shared services platform, which is linked to the domain. Secure.post, which is you go to that website now, you'll see something there. And something called the Post ISAC, which is the Postal and Logistics Sector Information Sharing and Analysis Center, Post ISAC, which we're implementing now. This is our framework which we operate within. I'm going to bore you with this. I'll just show you that we have a plan to do activities around this framework. And we talk about .post now for a second. So when we talk about using a top-level domain, and this is a whole internet governance forum, so this is actually exactly what we should be talking about today, a top-level domain. The reason why we are promoting .post, if you think about it for a second, many times you get emails from people utilizing .com, .net, .org, etc. Do you know that most of those top-level domains don't ask the registrant for information to prove who they are, right? So anybody can register a top-level domain, whatever they want to register, whatever. And if the domain is not already taken, then they can register anything they want as an individual. Not only that, in many cases, especially in the cheaper domains, you find that the names can be spoofed. So if you look at, let's say, Facebook, you already know knows Facebook, right? What Facebook is. Facebook has the letter A in it, right? The letter F-A-C, etc. The letter A in Latin script is written a certain way, right? Written, as you can see it, written like this, right? Like that. But if it's in something called like Greek, the letter A is written like this, right? A little different. Someone's nodding, you know what I'm talking about. And that little difference of the A is very hard to spot with the naked eye. So a smart attacker can buy a domain with an A in it that you think is your own, it's your company, a bank, or whatever. It could be bank. Attack bank's very popular. Attack target for this, let's say it's Cuba Bank. And instead of buying the correct name, instead of buying the name because it's already gone by, Cuba Bank has it, cubabank.com or .c or whatever. They buy Cuba Bank, but they change the A. And in some of those domains, that A is available. Some have prevented it, but some still have it available. And then, now that they have the domain, they can then use that to create email addresses that make sense to you. Maybe somebody you know, maybe, manager, customer service, whatever. And the domain is fake. You don't know it's fake. And as I said, creating very powerful messages using AI now, you can get emails from this attacker that looks legitimate from the domain level, the message level, everything looks fine, about doing something that will allow you to enter your credentials. Because the way the domain system, the name system works, and people can do that, we are saying with .post, for those companies who are involved in a sector, use a .post domain, because in .post, we verify every single applicant for a domain. So every domain that is applied for, we check, verify who they are, also provide documentation. And therefore, when you see a .post domain, something .post, you can be 100% assured it's something that the UPU has verified, right? So when you see an email address from someone at something.post, you can feel pretty confident that that is the correct address that is dealing with you. And we're encouraging our stakeholders in the sector to purchase these domains so that they can improve the cybersecurity posture of the entire sector, but also provide more trust for them and for you as we go forward. So that's what we're doing with .post. In addition, we are, because it's a secure trusted identity for the sector, we call it's a trusted identity. So .post becomes an identity, right? If you go to info.post now, and you can see about us, and you can also go to trust.post to see more about what we are doing, right? We also, as I mentioned, strict registration requirements, proves your brand recognition, etc. I'll show you quickly in a few more slides who people was using it. The benefits for we don't also sell it to individuals. So only organizations can buy this domain. And we are the only United Nations agency that offers a top-level domain. The only one. So you have the trust of United Nations behind us. We are the only UN agency, I can say that without fail or favor, we're the only UN agency that offers a top-level domain. And by definition, we are internet governance native. as a UN agency. So trust.post is where we have our information about getting a domain. So please feel free to visit it if you are from the private sector, an NGO, wherever you want to get a domain from us. Also, I mentioned our shared services platform, or something went wrong with the header there. But again, trust.post is where it's at. And we offer email hosting, web hosting, secure e-commerce, certificates, etc. So all the things that you'll get from our web service provider, hosting provider, we offer it as well through our secure platform. So if you want to get an entire suite of solutions, come to trust.post, and we have our discounts available for small and developing states and for least developed countries as well. There's a few examples of people using .post today. We have Ethiopia. So they've converted from their country code to ethio.post. The name of their post is ethiopost. That's one who has converted. Romania, ro.post. They've converted as well. Malawi post is a long one, but that's what they wanted. Malawi post.post. They've converted. Check it out. You might like this one. Zimbabwe Mall. Zimbabwe is using .post. So Zimbabwe Mall.post also converted. Senegal also converted to .post, but they're using it on the intranet, not on the website, which is even more interesting. They've secured internal services utilizing .post for their employees. Even the UPU is using it. So we are drinking our own champagne. So we have a series of websites, EMS, which is familiar to some of you, Express Mail Service, using it. Address.post, which is addressing, or stamps, online stamp service, Oscar.post for environmental awareness, and so on. So if you were to scan this QR code, you will get, I hope it works in Cuba, because I'm not sure if this website works. It's going to say the monkey website, it may not work in Cuba. Hopefully you'll get to see a form that allows you to, you have to use a VPN if you don't already use one on your phone, to apply for a starter package through us that we could provide some support to you to get you up and running with the top level, with our services. Now, secure.post, our other solution. Let's promote cyber hygiene. So if you go to secure.post today, right now, at that, I know that's working for sure because I checked it yesterday. You'll see one of our solutions, which is a check my link service. So what happens is that if you are not sure about the smishing links that you are seeing, expand out the link, because you normally a shortened version. When you get the full link, you don't do anything there. Check it first on our website. And you'll see if it's been reported for abuse or malware or scams. And that is currently available today on secure.post. Also called check.secure.post. We have that available today for you. And that's open to anybody to use right now. All right? And we're also promoting something called the Post ISAC. So what we're doing, we're working with our multi-stakeholder base to promote cybersecurity awareness and cyber resilience improvement within organizations. So what we're doing today is looking at working with these organizations called APWG. Thank you. First, for those who don't know, these are cybersecurity focused organizations who are really top of the line in this area. Also, ICANN, who is, of course, with our top level domain, Internet Society, and I see the Caribbean head of the ITU is here. We're working with the ITU in terms of their work on cyber resilience at the UPU. As I mentioned this, we created digital trust with our domain, and we have a framework in which all people who use the top level domain have to utilize these compliance standards. So if you're using the top level domain, we are telling you must use secure transactions using HTTPS, which is now straightforward. That's what we have to use. But also we want you to use something called DNSSEC, which secures your website, your domain at the root level. So you have to do that. We also are saying on email, you implement these three standards called SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, which is I'm going to bore you with that today. But those are designed to prevent spoofing and provide better trust in the email that you currently use today. So you don't have to do anything more than get that installed on your email servers, etc. All right? So we are promoting that. Use the top-level domain and also install or implement these standards. And finally, we have something called the Post ISAC. This is a new venture that we have launched to encourage collaboration on cybersecurity among all of our stakeholders in the sector. So it is a secure space where you and stakeholders, governments, CERTs, the post offices, the logistics providers, whomever, software providers, airlines, everybody can gather and share information on cybersecurity. Whether you have an attack already, whether you're undergoing an attack now, or whether you are afraid of being attacked. So all the stages. You can share information and get information as well as training. For example, yesterday, the training we did was under the umbrella of Post ISAC. Right? So just stuff for key objectives, etc. I'm summarizing because I don't have a lot of time to go into this in detail. But it's really just to promote sharing of information. And imagine that today, if you were being attacked, you would not know where to go to get information. So for the sector, it's not for everybody. It's not for the, you have to be vetted to join. You can come and get information on what's going on in the sector. For example, for today you had a threat that was put out by company X, etc. We'll be reporting on that, having that available to you in a secure space. We have a public website for this as well, but it's secure to share information among collaborators. Yes, we launched this this year, and we are encouraging folks to join the ISAC or to express their interest in joining the ISAC through an onboarding initiative we're implementing now. We're going to various events like this one to encourage individuals in the sector. So if you are in the technology sector, technology service providers, if you are in an airline or transportation company, you make packages, you are an academic institution, it's pretty broad. So it's just that we don't encourage individuals to join. Once you supply services to the sector, or you are part of the sector that is receiving those services, then we encourage you to join the Post ISAC. It's going to be the first UN agency to run an ISAC. The ISAC is a very big project. It's global in most cases. There's a financial services ISAC. There's an ISAC for transportation. There's an ISAC for telecoms and so on. We are the first one to run one for postal logistics, and the only UN agency running an ISAC. So I mentioned about the starter package, so you can scan this if it works. But also we have a QR code here, which allows you to express interest in joining the ISAC. So again, I hope it works in Cuba. If not, we have to use a VPN to probably get access to that link. But please scan the code and I hope it goes to. So VPNs, I think some shaking of heads. So I'm assuming that this is a site that's not allowed, but if you use a VPN, you'll probably get access to it. Yep. All right, so quickly onto what the UPU is doing with the CTU, who is co-hosting this event. We have an MOU that's shared, signed in 2023. And under this MOU, we've been doing a lot of work, including this event. Yesterday we had with the CTU, and we've also done work directly with Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Belize and Grenada, which is currently underway. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out. Well, I mean, this is for the postal sector. Reach out to the CTU to express your interest in getting some work done under this project, to do an assessment of your infrastructure, digital assessment. Under the CTU MOU, you can get that done through the UPU, especially for your postal sector in particular. All right, so that's it from me. Thank you very much, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Hackshaw? Yes, you can go to the mic.
Morning to everyone. I'm Timothy Scott. I'm from Grenada, the island of Grenada. My question to you, do .post allowed extension of top level domain name for country top domain name? Country top domain name. Like for example, post.gd, just to identify the country. I realized most of those what you showed was just that post. Do you allow extension?
So we are a top level domain. So it wouldn't work the way you're suggesting. So we are at the right of the dot all the time. So the only way it's going to work is if you have the country code or the country name before that. You see what I'm saying? We are a top level domain. So the country code is already a top level domain. So a CCT like GD, right, cannot be at the left or the right of us. It's going to be at the left of us. So you can have, so for example, Grenada Post, they are looking to register. We have basically reserved the country names and the country codes for the government already at the UPU. So if Grenada Post wants gd.post or grenada.post, they can actually get that. But we don't, it's a different thing you're asking about whether we can be, the actual CCTLD can in fact put post in front of it if they wanted to. We may object to that, but we won't do that. We are the top level. We are the top level.
I know in most places that you put a domain name at the end which represent the country, like post.gd.
No, that's a CCTLD.
CCTLD.
Yes, that's a little different. So we are we actually call a sponsor top level domain, a generic. So we are the same level at the CC. You see what I'm saying? So .gd and .post are the same level in the DNS. You see what I'm trying? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you can't have .post.gd from us. The CCTLD can decide to put post in front of .gd if they wanted to. That's up to them, and create a second level domain for post. But they may not want to. Why would they do that? They already have co and I guess org, etc. So that's how it operates. But as I said, if Grenada government wants it or the post wants it, we have reserved it for them to get it to the left of .post. We don't offer to the, we can't offer to the right. And I hope that's clear. Yeah, thanks. It's a very internet governance question. One more question to see.
So I'm not seeing anything online. I would ask one question. Given the region's move towards e-commerce and digital trade, do you see barcodes being phased out for something more secure? Or would we continue to use barcodes but with more enhanced security?
It's a good question. There's a whole working group in the UPU on that right now. The issue is really, so barcodes, for those who don't know, are really, it's in many cases just a keystroke, right? So it's a very simple thing. But in other cases, it stores data, right? So a QR code is a good example of that. Or 2D barcode, which is what most posts use now. So it's that sort of squiggle, it's not the lines. Most times you see the lines that represents a number. It represents a string of numbers or a number. So that still exists in many packages. But most packages you see today carry a two-dimensional barcode, which stores data. So it stores the information on where something is going, who sent it, the carriers in between, etc., etc. And that's the special scans for that. So that is by definition fairly secure, because in many cases, the standard that is being used for the packages is what we call proprietary, right? So in a way, it's secure from that standpoint. You can't just use any device to read it. But you're absolutely right in that barcodes themselves, as a concept, are risky, because if you look at your airline tickets that you get, anything that you have a package, it's recommended, and I'm a cybersecurity person to say, I don't recommend you throw away your packages without scratching off the barcodes, or your boarding passes, or anything with a barcode. I recommend that you at least scratch it out. They get, put a knife through it, or at least black it off if you want to do that. Because the data that's there, people can mine that data. It doesn't matter what's there. There's a way to get to what you're looking for, even if it's a number. So there is a working group at the UPU to look to further protect or secure the barcodes. But the question, if you ask whether it's going away anytime soon, at one time we thought QR codes, which QR codes are barcodes. It's called what it is. It's a barcode, a special type of 2D barcode. We assumed that was going away very rapidly at one time. We just assumed that it was emerged in Asia. I think it was Japan or Korea that emerged first and sort of became popular there. And then it didn't really make any presence. People used it in the Western world first, and then no one took it on. Then all of a sudden, it's QR codes everywhere. So I wouldn't think it's going away anytime soon, because it's probably the easiest thing to shorten information. So a website name or email address or whatever, it's the easiest thing to do to represent it. And I think the rise of phones, devices, mobile devices that can scan them. So instead of having special devices like what you call point-of-sale scanners you see in supermarkets that you use to scan these things, mobile device, basically your smartphone, can scan barcodes at will. And that has created an environment where I think it's become more prevalent, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, because instead of writing out things, we become more visual. So instead of writing things, we do emojis. Instead of writing out, we don't write text messages anymore. Well, I think maybe we're all older here, but certainly my children don't write very long messages to me. They send me stuff in emojis. So the barcode is the QR code is an example of, instead of writing out something, I'll just send you a QR code because it's easier, and you just scan it. And people prefer that apparently than writing things out. Here's the email, here's the address or whatever. So I think it's not going away anytime soon, but I do think there will be work being done on security of sensitive data on barcodes. So again, if you scan your airline boarding pass, I know I said to rip it up or scratch it out, but your phone can't read that today. If you put your phone to read the barcode on the airline boarding pass, it can't read it. It'll give you data. You'll see data. The thing is that data can be entered by somebody else who understands what it means or has software to read it. So we still say scratch it out, but the average person won't know what it's saying. It'll be 437Y. It has all sort of weird stuff in it. Yeah, that's.
Thank you, Mr. Hackshaw. Finally, we're going to hand over to Professor Maurice McNaughton, also joining us remotely. He has been a leader in digital policy research across the Caribbean, and today he will discuss the broader implications of data governance in fostering innovation and problem solving across the region.
Okay, thank you very much. Just checking, is everyone hearing me clearly?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, are you able to hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, morning everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to participate in this forum this morning. I'm only regretful that I was not able to join you in fantastic Varadero, Cuba, I would have welcomed the opportunity to greet some of my colleagues from UCI, from Universidad de las Ciencias Informáticas. I see a couple of them on the program, so that would have been a pleasure. Nevertheless, let me thank the CTU for the invitation. I can only imagine the seriousness of the deliberations that this 21st edition of the CIGF will contemplate in such a time of seismic transformational developments in digital technologies such as generative AI. Hope that I'll be able to contribute meaningfully to some of that dialogue. I know we're a little bit behind time, so Madam Moderator, can you just, to keep me honest, tell me how much time that I have for this session?
I think we can afford you 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let me set my stopwatch. Okay, so I know that one of the distinctions of the CIGF is the work that you've done in establishing a regional internet governance policy framework that the CTU has been sort of the facilitator and architect of. And certainly while connectivity was at the forefront of that policy dialogue, obviously in recent times, advances in digital technologies, in challenges with cybersecurity and data protection, and of course, artificial intelligence necessitates a much more agile and responsive adaptation of that policy framework. And I imagine work is ongoing in keeping that framework current with the technological advancements. So what I'll be doing in this session is really focus on policy. So I'm going to just share some perspective on the state of digital governance in the Caribbean. And I do this by sharing insights from two very recent and quite important studies that we participated in with a global community of researchers. So the Global Index for Responsible AI and the Global Data Barometer, both looking at artificial intelligence and its governance as well as data governance. Then I'm going to briefly introduce you to a digital policy landscape tool that we found it here at UWI. We found it necessary to develop such a tool to sort of not only create an electronic repository of the landscape of Caribbean policy and governance artifacts, but something that can become a basis for the ongoing effort of policy analysis, harmonization, unification, and so forth. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about an initiative that we're involved with, World Digital Governance. So it's a quite novel, I might say a revolutionary approach to digital policy framework that tries to present a collaborative and coherent approach to unified digital AI and data governance. So those are the three elements that I'm going to try to cover in my 20 minutes. And as we go through, I may have to skip through some of that. Okay, let me start with just the findings of these two studies, which again are quite important. I certainly will recommend them as references for colleagues at this seminar. I think we all know AI and where AI is and its history. A lot of the talk nowadays about generative AI, it's important to recognize that the evolution of artificial intelligence has been certainly much more long-standing and very much since the early 1950s, when there was a sort of fascination with whether machines can behave like humans. But certainly the current generation of artificial intelligence, generative AI, large language models, would have emerged around about 2017 with the transformer model and this whole attentional algorithm, which is a whole other discussion, but it's important to know that that is a kind of inflection point. So the Global Index on Responsible AI, GIRA for short, is a global study, multidimensional study that tries to assess where different countries and different country ecosystems are in relation to responsible AI. So I studied that, the first edition, which was 2023, if I recall correctly, was done across 138 countries. And this idea of responsible AI is really subsumes a number of terms such as ethical AI and so forth, but it's looking at the design, development, deployment, and governance of AI in a way that respects and protects human rights and upholds the principles of AI ethics across the entire AI life cycle. So it is very much human rights centered. This is sort of what that the framework for JIRA looks like. So it looks across these three dimensions. Obviously, AI governance, which consists of both governance frameworks, government actions, and also we look at the activities of non-state actors such as academia, the private sector, and other civil society organizations. So that's governance dimension, but it also looks at capacity and the idea that building AI capacity, again, both in the public sector, private sector, and academia is incredibly important to effective governance. And then so responsible AI capacities. And then, of course, there's a human rights dimension, which looks at AI and its impact across a number of thematic human rights areas, such as gender, data protection and privacy, children's rights, and so forth. So you can see it's a quite comprehensive instrument. And this study was carried out by a global research team. Here in the Caribbean, we had a team of 9 researchers that looked at this across 9 countries. So not sure whether I should suggest that 9 countries are representative of the Caribbean as a whole, but I think it was a pretty good sample of Caribbean countries, including Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, Belize, Dominican Republic, Haiti, the Bahamas, if I recall. But anyway, just some of the key findings. First of all, and these are global findings, but certainly very relevant to the Caribbean. So just having AI governance and AI governance mechanisms in place, especially policies and legislative artifacts, guidelines, strategies, that does not necessarily translate into responsible AI. That's a quite important point, that we have to take a holistic approach to responsible AI. Another important point is the idea that for us in the Caribbean, international cooperation is an important aspect of the way we approach AI governance and AI practices. And certainly the work of entities like UNESCO in the Caribbean are quite important to facilitating that process. The other aspect of responsible AI is that it's not one size fits all. In the Caribbean, we have to define more approach to AI that takes into account our own distinctive cultural and linguistic diversity. And so that is quite important. That simple case in point, for instance, seeing AI models being developed or Gen AI-driven applications being developed recently that are capable of speaking Jamaican patois. So that's one element of cultural diversity that we have to incorporate into our own approaches to AI. Both academia and civil society have a critical role to play, so it's not just a government play. And we have a ways to go. So this study sort of indicated that the progress for responsible AI is still far behind the developments that are taking place. So that's the JIRA study. It actually came out with a ranking of countries, which is not necessarily critical, but it's useful to know that in terms of the top 10 countries, you have the Netherlands, for instance, Germany, United Kingdom, USA, what you would consider global north. Whereas for the Caribbean, we had countries pretty much falling in the latter half of the ranking table, but certainly being led by the Dominican Republic, which has done considerable work around developing their own national AI strategies and policies, followed by Jamaica and others. And so those are the 9 countries that we would have done in the Caribbean. So it's quite an important study. Some of the prescriptions coming out of this obviously have to do with our governments and our societies have to invest more effort in establishing frameworks, policies, and laws to effectively govern AI and ensuring that we can protect citizen rights and human rights. An urgent focus on capacity building. We have to build the skills, not just general AI literacy, but the specific data science skills that allow us to be able to create our own sort of downstream models and build our own AI applications. And obviously collaboration both regionally and with international agencies is quite important. So that's the JIRA study. Again, I would recommend that you will have these slides, and the full report on JIRA can be found here, globalindex.ai. The second thing I'll just speak about very briefly, and this study was just completed recently, is the Global Data Barometer. So while JIRA focused on AI, the GDB report, and this is the second edition, focus on data. Again, this is a comprehensive global study that we participated in, and looking at the effectiveness of national data ecosystems and the way data is being governed, shared, and leveraged for the public good. So GDB is quite an important study, and as you will see, AI governance and data governance are inextricably interlinked, and you cannot have effective AI governance without having good data governance. JIRA, again, just in terms of the numbers, covered 43 countries globally. We did, in this case, 6 countries in the Caribbean, over 30,000 data points collected, 27 primary indicators. And again, it's an important study. It provides insights across these 3 pillars. So governance, so what are the kind of legislative, regulatory, and policy artifacts, as well as guidelines that exist at a country level. Capabilities, so looking at skills, training, competencies within the public sector. And then the third dimension, or the third pillar, is availability, the extent to which data as a national public asset is being made available. So again, quite comprehensive study. The findings for the Caribbean generally, so we're better than the global average, but Latin America and the Caribbean are, on the average, are somewhere around 45.39, and this is out of 100. The Caribbean is somewhat behind our Latin American counterparts. There's a couple of quick insights from this, and this one is quite interesting because when you look at the governance mechanisms, the governance foundations, the Caribbean actually is doing quite well when it comes to data protection, quite a bit of work around data privacy legislations and so forth, regulations and so forth. But we are very, and I'll use the term poor, when it comes to data sharing. And I think that speaks to a particular disposition that we've had for a long time of not sharing data well, as both within the public sector, but also in terms of open data initiatives, open data policies. So we're very good at securing, protecting, and data privacy emphasis, but less so at openness and sharing data. So again, this study points to a number of areas where we have to invest in critical competencies. And again, I will refer it as an important study to look at as we contemplate the evolution of the policy landscape. Several of the key TDB findings that resonate with the Caribbean. Data skills and competencies are critical. Without those foundational competencies, even well-designed governance frameworks are just going to remain aspirational. So it's not just a matter of putting in the policies, the legislative and regulatory artifacts, but we have to invest in data skills and competencies in a very deliberate way. And this is across public, private sector, academia, civil society at large. Readiness for AI in terms of the data ecosystems remains largely fragmented and underdeveloped. And so while a number of our countries are jumping on the AI bandwagon in terms of national AI strategies, in a few cases, AI policies, we can't bypass the importance of national data governance frameworks. Otherwise, we're going to be found wanting in terms of being able to effectively deploy responsible AI. And one I find this here is that open data, which was quite fashionable in several Caribbean countries 5, 6, 7 years ago, has kind of declined actually, and is at something of a crossroads. So while there was initial progress in adopting open data policies and the active publishing of open data portals, a number of those governmental initiatives have largely declined as it has become less fashionable, and in a sense, we're moving to the new flavor of the month, which is AI. But it's critical that we continue to keep the focus on data governance, right? And there are other aspects of the analysis from the GDB study that won't have the time to go through here. But again, I will point you to the Global Data Barometer study, and the full comprehensive report is here, including a more detailed report on the Caribbean findings. So fully recommended there. One quick point I'll make here, having looked at both of those two frameworks, is just to reinforce the idea that AI is only as good as the data that it is trained on. And if that data has quality issues, if it is not representative, then we're going to be found wanting in terms of the effectiveness of our AI governance and our AI applications and solutions. So it's very important to make data representative. We have to continue to foster open and accessible data ecosystems. Interoperability standards for data quality and integration are important. And ensuring that while we do that, we continue to allow individuals, allow people to protect their own personal data. So, we could get into a more extended conversation on the interlinkages between AI governance and data governance, but we probably don't have the time for that. So I'll just skip through those notes. But just to make the point that, again, the critical urgency of data governance in relation to the AI development lifecycle is end-to-end, from the kind of data that we draw from the real world, which may have its own historical biases, to the kind of representative data that we pull into our models, to the way those models are developed and deployed. So data and data governance is a critical underlying factor in the whole AI governance. One of the things that we found it useful to do quite recently here at the UAE was to, as we've gone through these studies, was to develop this digital policy landscape tool. It's a tool that gives us the opportunity to pull together a quite comprehensive repository of the existing laws, regulations, policies, and key institutional actors that are shaping the ICT data and AI ecosystems across the Caribbean. And we focus on those three elements deliberately. So again, as we look for the Caribbean, harmonizing digital policies across these three ecosystems, we thought it was quite important to have this repository, this public good that would be available to facilitate policy mapping, to facilitate analysis of regulatory coherence across national boundaries, and to identify gaps and opportunities in the regional digital policy landscape. So again, this is a tool that is online, it's available, it's completely open access. I'll share the URL to that. This, for instance, is just a map of the 500 and I think now 60 something artifacts that are resident in that tool. And so there's an online platform that allows access to those artifacts, and in most cases allow you to retrieve the source documents. It also has an interesting, let me call it experimental AI chatbot, which allows you to interrogate this digital policy repository in a very, let's say, user-friendly way. So you have the analytic interface that allows you to search and retrieve documents, policy documents, again, artifacts. It cuts across, as I said, legislative artifacts, policy artifacts, guidelines, strategies, and it's a quite comprehensive repository for the Caribbean. And then, of course, as I said, the AI chatbot on top of this is a kind of policy assistant that allows you to interrogate that repository in a very user-friendly way. So finally, I think, Moderator, I have maybe about another 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes. So I'll share with you an initiative that we're involved in, which is quite fascinating, actually. It's called the World Digital Governance, and it's seeking to architect a sort of unified digital policy and let's call it tool, artifact. And again, don't have enough time to go through all of this, but it starts with the premise that there's a lot of fragmentation and inconsistency in the digital policy landscape. And that is true of the Caribbean as it is sort of globally. And so what WDG tries to do is to take a very principles-based approach to coming up with unified digital governance, which takes into account a number of core principles. And so those core principles begin with the whole idea of digital sovereignty, so that individual rights to one's own data, or where data is shared between individual and enterprise or individual and the state, then that becomes a shared ownership that requires multi-party consent. It looks to accelerate AI development and deployment with very clear guardrails around how AI is trained, but guardrails around how AI models can be used, and guardrails around decisions that AI can make without human intervention. And the third element of this is that it seeks to anchor itself in principles over policy for any kind of arbitration. So there's a sort of 3 core principles on which this is built. The thing that is fascinating about it for me is, or for us as, in fact, and again, we're working closely with the team, is that the work of WDG started with the Caribbean and looking at the Caribbean landscape, and in fact, started with the Caribbean Policy Repository that I introduced earlier. And so that became a starting point for building a unified policy repository, first for the Caribbean, and then looking to extend that globally. So again, it's quite ambitious, but the approach is quite interesting. It's quite fascinating, actually. And one of the things that it does is it's very data-driven, but as well, it is very AI-enabled. So collecting all of these policy artifacts from across the Caribbean and extending that to policy artifacts across all continents, and then using AI to parse and analyze those using a set of established scoring models to come up with what it considers to be a unified policy framework. So again, it's a quite interesting, quite comprehensive approach. This kind of schematic shows, again, taking the Caribbean policy artifacts and artifacts from other continents into a unified policy database, generating from that, with the help of AI and policy experts, a kind of consolidated table of contents, and then that becomes the basis for a draft unified policy, which we're in the process of going through an iterative process of review with a set of key stakeholders. So there's a core working group that's doing the validation of this approach, and then there's an extended working group that's kicking the tires on this, providing comments. And ultimately, the hope is that, and I know CTU is partnering on this, that there will be a resolution that can be presented to a meeting of ICT ministers during the CTU ICT week sometime in September. So it's a very, again, I say novel, innovative approach to this, with the goal of unified digital policy governance. So let me just run through this quickly. Again, just to make the point that part of the approach is very data-driven, collecting all of these document artifacts, running those through AI models that are scoring them based on a number of rubrics that have been designed. And again, this is very transparent and very open to review, to critique, hence the process of having open working groups that are examining this approach and ultimately the artifacts that come out of this. And so that's kind of where we are with the World Digital Governance, and wanted to table it before this CIGF, but I'm sure there are going to be other opportunities and forums to present this in more detail. So let me stop there, Madam Moderator. I think I've used my 20 minutes that you've allowed me.
Yes, and thank you very much for sharing with us.
I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
So at this time, we have time for one question. No questions in the room or online. So as we close this session, I'd like to thank all the speakers and ask that we all stay on just for a few minutes to take a group shot. And now I'd hand you over back to Dairon.
Muchísimas gracias, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and thanks to the speakers, and thanks to those online, and thanks for the professor for sharing with us and with the Caribbean, and that might be useful to properly understand and how to effectively use internet governance. A round of applause, Varadero, for these landscapes, for these perspectives about this important information. Now we would like to have lunch break. We shall be back here at 2 p.m. in this same salon. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be seeing each other.